Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum. Very good afternoon, very good evening to everyone. I am Shamil Yusof, representing the Secretariat for VC Sukan Negara 2030. Welcome to today's Town Hall. Today's Town Hall is session number 4 with the topic of technology and innovation in sports. To start, allow me to introduce our esteemed panel of speakers today. So I would like to start with Dr. Muhammad Hasnun Arif Hassan, the President of Malaysia Sports Technology Association, or MySTA. Welcome to Mr. Joseph Dolcetti, the CEO of LiLAMovetech. Mr. Raymond Hang, CEO of Athletes for Athletes Solutions Sdn Bhd, or Afa. Encik Azmir Z, the CEO of Atf Sport Taping. And Mr. Sheyong, the CEO of BiiB application, or Neupulse Sdn Bhd. Let's give them a rousing welcome. Again, I am Shamil Yusof. We are representing Ministry of Youth and Sport, KBS. We are now embarking on producing a 10-year blueprint and roadmap for the country, for sports in the country, called VC Sukan Negara. And I understand that many of you have been following the Town Hall series for VC Sukan Negara, and for that, we thank you. We thank you very much. And there will be multiple and various other sessions to follow up this one, focusing on all the pillars of VC Sukan Negara. So for today, without further ado, I'd like to jump into the introduction to VC Sukan Negara, which we will then play you a short video explaining what exactly is the National Sports Vision. So if we may start with the slides. Okay, next. A little bit a brief introduction. The Malaysian Ministry of Youth and Sports, we are in the midst of developing a national sports vision, a roadmap and blueprint that will hopefully drive the nation's sporting future for the next 10 years through the empowerment of industry-related policies for us to be able to develop a vibrant sports industry that is comprehensive, integrated, and collective. Next. The rationales behind the production or the formulation of this national sports vision is, number one, to position Malaysia as a leader in the global sporting landscape, reinforced by a sustainable sports industry. Number two, we are fully committed to the aspirations and principles of the Shared Prosperity Vision 2030, or Wawasan Kemakmuran Bersama. Number three, we are committed to advancing the Agenda 2030 of the United Nations Sustainable Developmental Goals. Number four, to leverage on the rapidly evolving application of technology in the changing digital world. And number five, to have a democratization of sports in Malaysia by focusing on emerging new sports. Next. So what exactly is VC Sukan Negara? VSN is a sports development planning structure for a period of 10 years in line with the Shared Prosperity Vision. It is a development of a collective, inclusive and comprehensive sports development plan with the concept of from the community to the community. Number three, we aim of making Malaysia an agile sporting nation with a mission to cultivate sports as a catalyst to improve socio-economy and quality of life. And number four, we aspire that the document will outline key thrusts, new focuses and high-impact approaches for us to empower the national sports development agenda with a clear outcome and action plan. Next. We have ascertained 6 focus areas, which we will cover sparingly today. The first focus area is sporting culture, where we seek to promote sports culture as a lifestyle for all Malaysians. Number 2 is sporting excellence, where we want to continue the prolonged efforts of establishing a high-performance sports ecosystem that is active in nurturing champions on the global stage. Number 3, for talent development and identification, we want to identify, nurture and empower future talents through a structured and comprehensive national talent development model that will be driven by innovative scientific applications. Number 4, to create Malaysia as a sporting hub to position Malaysia not just as a preferred destination for world-class sports services and infrastructure, but also facilities, coaching and other professional sports services. We can't underline enough the importance of professional sports services. You know, we have a lack of sports lawyers, we have a lack of sports nutritionists, sports psychologists, media consultants, and so on and so forth. Number 5 is sports industry empowerment, where we seek to empower a progressive and high value-added sporting industry that will significantly contribute to the national economy. And last but not least, we want to cultivate a healthier environment for professionalism in sports, where we enhance professionalism in the national sports ecosystem by focusing on high integrity and effective governance. Next. So having ascertained all of those pillars, we understood that we needed to start our journey by engaging everyone, engaging all of the stakeholders in sports. So we started off with the VSN2030 canvas. What is this canvas? It is an initiative by KBS for us to acquire and gather aspirations and hopes from all Malaysians, from all layers of life and stakeholding in the sporting industry and beyond, in guiding the government to formulate the direction of the nation's new sports development plan more collectively towards empowering a progressive and sustainable sports industry. To cut across all the jargon, ladies and gentlemen, KBS seeks to listen to all of you. We want to listen to your feedbacks. We want to listen to your inputs. We want to listen to your complaints and hopefully the constructive criticism for us to, number 1, be able to understand you better. Number 2, be able to internalize our processes with all the stakeholders in mind. And number 3, to produce a roadmap and blueprint that everyone will own together. Next. The component of the canvas includes the VSN2030 Canvas portal. You can visit VSN2030.my, where it's an interactive online portal for citizens to voice your views and aspirations. And number 2, since August last year, we have been doing a lot of internal town hall sessions with all of the stakeholders, associations, athletes, coaches, management involved in the Malaysian sports landscape. But now from April to October onwards, we will be conducting various engagement sessions, more than 60 engagement sessions, where we will engage the audience via town halls, clubhouse, Twitter space sessions, and FB live sessions. Next. The timeline for Canvas VC Sukarnegara, it was launched on the 7th of April 2021 and it will conclude in October. Right now, we are in the data collection and engagement of stakeholders sector, and we are going to move into the development of the initial document within July and August. So after we speak to all of you, we will also be holding a few workshops where we will have challenge sessions and consult multiple panels from the academic as well as the professional sectors to be able to understand the formulation of the blueprints of the sectors within the blueprints. So we aim to publish the National Sports Vision document from October onwards. Next. Please don't hesitate to share your vision. You can scan the QR code on the screen, which will take you to VSN2030.my, our portal. Share your vision, share your aspirations. We want to hear from you. We want to understand what is close to your heart and how we can together more effectively bring Malaysian sports into the future. So without further ado, I'd like to continue with a special video for VSN2030.
Bagi saya, kita perlu ada visi untuk menjadikan atlet-atlet kita bertaraf antarabangsa.
Aspirasi saya adalah untuk meningkatkan prestasi atlet di persada dunia untuk melahirkan lebih ramai lagi jago dunia.
Supaya jurulatih-jurulatih tempatan diberi lebih peluang dapat juga menguruskan semua bidang sukan.
Aspirasi saya adalah untuk membantu Malaysia menjadi lebih kompetitif dari segi e-sports in the international level lah.
Aspirasi saya ialah untuk melihat atlet-atlet negara yang berada di kemuncak prestasi mereka selepas mereka bersara terus menjadi wira di mata rakyat Malaysia.
mengharapkan dan juga mengimpikan lebih ramai atlet Paralimpik yang berkualiti tinggi dapat dihasilkan.
Medal. My Bakat iaitu Talent Identification Plan untuk Malaysia akan menjadi satu penyelesaian kepada kesinambungan atlet-atlet yang bakal menyumbang kepada dekad emas.
Visi saya ialah lebih kepada membudayakan sukan. Sekarang kita dapat melihat semakin ramai yang minat dengan sukan basikal, tetapi mungkin antara penghalangnya dari segi facilities, dari segi peluang yang diberikan yang lebih jelas untuk kepada yang berminat untuk nak bergiat dengan sukan berbasikal, mereka lebih faham dan lebih ada keterbukaan.
Aspirasi saya adalah menjadikan semua atlet dari Malaysia untuk menjadi hero untuk semua rakyat Malaysia dengan menggunakan digital macam social media, Facebook, TikTok, segala platformnya supaya boleh membinakan inspirasi untuk semua orang.
Quality for athletes, variety of talents. Addictivity to the minds, grace and style of Malaysian athletes. We are legends, we have stories to be told.
Well, hi, I'm Nicole David, and my national sport vision would be to have more children in schools to play sport and be active, and also to have families to get involved as well.
Saya berharap visi Sukan Negara 2030 melalui strategi-strategi yang lebih bersepadu akan dapat memperkasakan lagi pembangunan sukan di Malaysia dan seterusnya melahirkan jago-jago negara berkelas dunia.
Saya mengharapkan visi Sukan Negara kita mempunyai begitu banyak badan-badan dan juga persatuan sukan yang bertaraf antarabangsa dan juga atlet-atlet kita mencapai ataupun memiliki pencapaian pingat emas dalam sukan Olimpik dan di semua kejohanan-kejohanan dunia.
Inilah visi saya.
Apakah visi anda?
Ini visi saya. Apakah visi anda?
Ini visi saya, visi anda bagaimana pula?
This is my vision. What about yours?
Itu visi saya, visi anda pula bagaimana?
Ini visi saya. Anda bagaimana pula?
Inilah inspirasi dan inilah visi saya, dan apakah visi anda?
Okay. Thank you to the Secretariat for such an inspirational video. I watched it many times. I want to share my visions. All right. So thank you for being with us today. I'd like to say hello again to everyone. So right now is the moment we've all been waiting for. This is when we get to speak to our panelists, to our speakers one by one. So again, the house rules for anyone who has questions for the panelists, please don't hesitate to put up the questions at the Q&A section. We will address them from time to time. There will be a poll in the middle of the session. Feel free to answer the poll at your own convenience. And finally, for those who want to relay your questions yourself, don't hesitate to press the raise hand button, which we will bring you up to speak later. Okay? So, to begin, let me introduce to everyone to Dr. Muhammad Hasnun Arif Hassan, who is the President of Malaysia Sports Technology Association, or MySTA. How are you, Doctor? Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam. Fine, thank you, Shamil.
So we're very happy to have you here today, Doctor. So
thank you too for inviting me.
Our pleasure, our pleasure. So why not you start with introducing yourself and your association, and perhaps then we could speak later on the topics of the day.
Okay, so how long do I have to introduce myself and the...
For all the speakers, we would appreciate about 3 to 5 minutes per speaker to introduce yourselves. Then later kita boleh jump into all the topics.
Okay, so Assalamualaikum and very good afternoon to all the participants of this webinar. So my name is Muhammad Hasnun Arif bin Hassan. I'm currently working as a lecturer at the University Malaysia Pahang, and I am here representing the Malaysia Sports Technology Association. This is a new association, or we call it MySTA. We have been officially approved by the ROS last year on the 11th of November 2020. So we are about 7 months old now. So I think I'm going to talk a little bit about MySTA. How did MySTA actually started? So actually back in 2014, we've already planned to establish a society during a conference. At that time, there was a conference called Movement, Health and Exercise Conference, MOHE Conference 2014 in Kuantan. So this was the time I met several key people such as Mr. Syed Faris from ISN, and also I met Dr. Muhammad Noor from UTM and other researchers working in the field of sports engineering and technology. So we also had a representative from the International Sports Engineering Association, Professor Veit Senner from the Technical University of Munich, present at the conference. He represented the ISEA, the International Sports Engineering Association, and at that time he suggested that we became the ISEA chapter Malaysia. But unfortunately, the plan was not further pursued, but the ground, the foundation was laid, and the idea has been discussed since 2014. And in 2019, a few guys from UMP, University Malaysia Pahang, Dr. Anwar and myself, from UNIMAP, Mr. Suhizas from UITM, we have Dr. Zulkifli and Mr. Shuhada. From UTM, Dr. Muhammad Noor, and UTHM, Dr. Zamani, and from ISN also, Mr. Syed Faris and Mr. Fauzi. We sat together over coffee and kuih and decided to form this association related to sports technology in Malaysia, and we call it Malaysia Sports Technology Association, MySTA. So if I can talk about the aim of MySTA, MySTA aims to be the bridge between the academia and industry, and we believe in developing sports technology products. The first thing to have is we need the problem. So this is where government institutions such as ISN, for example, identifies the problem experienced by the athletes or the coach, because the academia on our side, we do not have direct access to the athletes. And then stage 2 in designing a product is to design and testing. So this is where academia comes into play, where our role is to design, simulate, calculate, do the test in the lab. These are all the things that we can do at the university. And then after a prototype has been produced, we need to test it in the field. So this is where Sports Council or ISN again comes into the equation to test the products in the field on actual athletes. And once the prototype is finished, normally it has reached technology readiness level 6, for example. Most of the time it is not yet marketable, because that is not a thing that academia is good at, designing products to be marketable. We just propose the technology or integrate the technology. So this is where I think industry comes into play to make the products marketable. So, and then finally, industry will then market the product. So I think this ecosystem of sports technology product development requires the involvement of many parties. So there should be a platform where these people from different backgrounds can sit together, discuss on potential projects and collaborate. So this is what MySTA is aiming to become. So I think that is my brief introduction about myself and MySTA. Thank you, Shamil.
Thank you, Doc. Thank you, Doc. Very interesting to hear. I think it's integral for everyone to know that MySTA is would be an enabler for all of us interested in developing probably technologies or businesses in sports. Is that correct, Doc?
Yes, correct. That is what we are hoping for, and then we hope that we can be the hub to connect these people from various backgrounds, like I mentioned earlier. Yeah.
That's great. So to all the attendees today, you can reach out to Dr. Hasnun and also all the other speakers via the Q&A section. You can ask questions, or you can ask for his phone number and email also for you to talk later. So this is a session that wants to promote and connect every one of you from the industry to the relevant parties and people who may be able to help collate and collaborate to work something better for everyone. Okay. So for our next speaker, I'd like to introduce Mr. Joseph Dolcetti, the CEO of LiLAMovetech. How are you, Joseph? Can you unmute your mic, please, Joseph?
Good job. Sorry, I'm good. I'm well. Thank you so much for having me today. It's great to be here with all these wonderful experts in the area.
It's our pleasure. So why don't you introduce yourself for the benefit of everyone, and maybe a slight introduction to what you do?
Okay, well, as I said, I'm Joe. I'm originally from Canada, and I've been involved in the sports environment here in Malaysia since I got here. I was originally head of high performance training for National Sports Council, National Sports Institute of Malaysia, back from 2000 Olympics. So I came in under ISN on a 2-year project with Sydney Olympics and SEA Games 2001, and 2 years became 4, 6, 8, and I was with Sports Council, and I think was fairly instrumental in helping to develop a lot of the national high performance program that we're still running today. And a lot of the top staff and people around there were people that were there, brought in and trained with me. And I left Sports Council in 2009 after sort of Beijing, and I started working on my own technology. As Doc was talking about, I created and prototyped a new tech in something called wearable resistance. I started that in 2003, and exactly like that, you know, literally making prototypes myself, testing ideas out, putting them on people like Lee Chong Wei and Chon Han and Malaysian badminton and various athletes in the early days. In fact, our first prototypes we were testing already as of the Athens Olympics 2004. And Nazmizan, our 100-meter, 200-meter sprint king from way back in the early 2000s, was a key person that was part of the whole inspiration in getting the idea out because it was a speed product. And by 2009, the product had been sort of really cleaned up a lot. It's still just me working by myself mostly and a few friends. And by then, we had enough feedback from the market that people were saying, you should take something with this technology and develop it commercially. You know, Doc, you were talking about the difficulty in commercializing ideas. I can tell you what that's like from start to finish. And not only commercializing, but patenting and the whole process. Because it's one thing to bring tech in, it's another thing to create a new tech. And so as of 2009, 2010, we formed Sport Boleh Sendirian Berhad, which is the parent company that brings the Lila movement technology branded products and wearable tech out to the market. And now, literally just today, we're launching our USA and UK teams this month. And we work with everybody from the New Zealand All Blacks to Paris Saint-Germain, Steph Curry and the Golden State Warriors, Canelo Alvarez. I mean, it's pretty exciting to see this little product that started out here in Malaysia now really making an impact at the global level. And the next challenge, though, it's wonderful to have tech accepted in a marketplace by tech people, but it's a whole different ballgame creating a commercial success. And I think everybody on this panel can talk about the difference between great ideas and great people and great thoughts and movement and great companies. And, you know, we're in that stage now trying to develop a great company out of it. And we're hoping to get there, and we're certainly going to work forward towards it. And I'm just excited to be here. And if I could share any of this experience with anybody, you know, I'm more than happy to do that. Malaysia's my home, and I started the company here because in Canada, there's a lot of tech. You know, the US, there's a lot of great tech. So when I had the choice to start the company, I took a good long look at the Malaysian sport environment. And I thought, to be honest, it was the bigger challenge. Malaysia doesn't have any tech. You know, there's no sports technology back then coming from Malaysia. We were bringing stuff in. And I thought, Malaysia needs examples of leadership in this area. So my local partners and I, we decided to see if we can make this happen from here. And it's certainly a challenge doing that, but I wouldn't have done it any other way. And as you know, Cradle and Ministry of Finance and a lot of these other great organizations, some people here, Sheyong and the others were part of the Cradle Ministry of Finance community. And the other reason why I stayed here, and I think even a credit to Vision 2030, there's really great support in Malaysia for a lot of these new initiatives. And I think everybody here also would feel that. And so I looked at what was happening in places like Canada back home, and I just thought the environment was better here to get great support. And I still think that's that way. Now we have to get out and get to the big markets overseas, but that's a different challenge. And again, I'm really happy to be here. And that guy in the red shirt, I'm really happy to see him because him and I are rugby teammates from the NS Wanderers. He was many years ago. He was a little bit slower than me back then, but yeah, I think his business is doing better now, though.
Little bit slower. I'll
He was pretty quick, not bad, but it's good to see him in all the faces and from the video. But that's our story. Like I said, and our tech line is specifically in wearable tech, wearable resistance, and metric solutions to measure change in performance.
Thank you, Joseph. Thank you for that introduction. I'd just like to touch on one small point. It makes me infinitely proud and also happy that you chose Malaysia as the home for you, for your test bed, for you to launch your product as well as your company. And it's also very heartening to hear you say that the ecosystem in Malaysia has assisted you somewhat for you to be able to bring this product to the global stage. And I'm sure most of the efforts are yours and your teams alone. However, the kind of support, the nature and nurture system that you went through, that is exactly the system that KBS seeks to fine-tune and to make more effective for everyone else who goes through the journey.
Yeah, and a point on that, we're just in the process of signing an MOU with ISN, who was, ISN and I are family. So we're working with Faisal and the team then on making sure that we're home strong and the product is getting out to the Malaysian athletes and sports system and community as well. But yeah, I'm really proud of that too. Malaysia has always had a great support for us, and everybody likes to complain about what's going on at home, but you forget all the great things that are happening here too. And I think this is part of that.
Thank you. It's good for us to point out that the National Sports Institute Sukarnegara, is playing the role as catalyst, enabler, and aggregator for sports technology and innovation in sports. So, thank you again, Joseph. Let's move to the next speaker for you to be able to introduce yourself. Next, we have my brother, Raymond Hung, the CEO of Athletes for Athlete Solutions yang Berhad, AFA. Raymond, how are you, bro?
Hey man, how are you? Good.
Introduce yourself and your business.
Yeah, sure. So hi everyone. So my name is Raymond. I'm the co-founder of Athletes for Athletes, or we call it AFA. So we are the mobile technology company that is, we consider ourselves ambitious and passionate about building a platform that basically connects the ecosystem with the sports industry for athletes and sports enthusiasts of all levels to the venues, the facilities, merchants, and other businesses. But in the layman term, we basically create a mobile application and a digital software that connects people with sports. So we believe that the sports ecosystem itself is built based on different pillars, right? So there are a lot of potential that it is AFA's mission to connect all of these pillars together. So what we do specifically in our mobile technology company is that primarily we offer venue booking platform. So what we do here is basically we facilitate venue bookings through our AFA mobile application platform for both the users and also the venue operators. On the other hand, we are also in the effort of building our very own IoT technology that basically helps venue operators in moving towards automation. And one main thing we do under AFA Link, which is the IoT technology, is basically enabling users to basically book a venue. Example, if you play badminton, want to play badminton, right? You have a badminton court to be able to, you're basically able to activate the court lights simply by just scanning a QR code once you book the venue with AFA app, right? So what we plan to do here is basically to position it as a fully contactless tag. And this is basically what we plan to make it as the go-to solution as an initiative for all venues as one step for the post-pandemic plans. So the future of AFA basically is to link up with more businesses like products and services to the users leveraging on our mobile technology, because our platform basically comprises of the users that are mainly into sports, right? So that's our goal. So our vision is basically to be the pioneering mobile application company that connects and is used by as many users as possible of athletes, sports enthusiasts, and also like the businesses of the ecosystem of sports. Yep. Thank you.
Thanks, bro. A few questions I have for you. So your app is actually up and running. Can we download it?
Oh, yes. Except if you're using Huawei, you can basically download our app in Play Store or App Store. Yeah.
So to any of our attendees yang pakai Huawei itu, sorry
Yeah, unfortunately. Not yet.
Move on to the next speaker, Raymond. Could you tell us perhaps where is your app operating out of in terms of sports facilities? Let's say if I come on board, mana I boleh book using your app?
Basically, as long as you are in Malaysia, let's say if you are a sports venue owners, you can just contact us. We basically have a separate platform that actually connects the venue operators to manage your bookings. You have a full-fledged of booking scheduler, staff management, sales performance management, and stuff like that. And we are also moving towards our AFA shop, which over there you can sell any of your sports-related items directly to the users of our app. And as for the users, basically, just log on to our app. Basically, you are able to identify your location and you are able to spot any of the nearest sports venues to you. And basically, you can just book a venue directly over there. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So, thank you. So, for everyone, do visit the Apple Store, Apple iOS Store and Google Play to download Raymond's app. It's called Afa, yeah, Raymond?
Yes.
Okay, so please go download their app and I will get a 15% commission. All right, joking, yeah? Okay. Next speaker, it is my pleasure to invite Encik Azmir Z, the CEO of ATF Sport Taping, also known as Coach Azmir. Someone, before I start, allow him to start. I used to respect a lot, but now that I found out he's slower than Joseph on the pitch.
I'm fast.
So go ahead, introduce yourself, Azmir.
All right, thank you, Shamil, for having me. Hope everyone's fine and staying safe at home. Okay, Azmir Zaid here. I used to play for the national team rugby and I used to play with Joe as well back then. I think 2010, 2011, that time. Yeah, he was a bit faster, but it was all in his dream.
No,
yeah,
I wasn't.
But nonetheless, nonetheless, it was a good time for us to play back then. Yeah, I have a background in chemical engineering, worked as a ninja for a few years before I decided to start my own business. And as an athlete, I used to get injury a lot, and my worst injury was dislocated my ankle. So back then I realized that Malaysian haven't got any real product coming from us in this market. That's where the idea popped up. And after doing some research, we decided with my partner to venture into this and started our brand, and that's how ATF was born. So the idea was to be a market leader in recovery and performance. And we started off with one of our products with a rigid tape, but eventually we evolved and started bringing new products. As compared to all the other established speakers, we might not into that tech that much, but we try to innovate ourselves, and we have a new product in line working with ISN, focusing on recovery, but it's nothing new technology. We're just using whatever technology available in the market at the moment and try to enhance things one at a time. But of course, in the future, as we grow, our plan is to build our own product and probably work with Dr. Hasnun team, have a Malaysian grown product, and then and build and commercialize it from scratch, like what did by Joseph. I think that's pretty much us. I think we have grown for the past 5 years working with all athletes from amateurs all the way to professional athletes, and now working with ISN. So it's been a pleasure, and hopefully we can be there and not only in Malaysia, but make Malaysian proud in the international level as well.
Thank you, Jasmine, for the introduction. So, I'd like to also ask you a few questions. For ATF Sport Taping, I am also a user of your product.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to thank you for the fair price point as well as the quality and value entry point for your product. However, I'd like to ask you. I was very intrigued by your partnerships with Selangor FC, and those I feel are areas which other brands in Malaysia, other products and services should look seriously into in terms of collaboration, also strategic value proposition between brands and teams. What have you got to say about that, bro?
All right, okay. So when we started off, we knew where we want to be. So I think we just have to find a strategy and the mechanism on how to get there. So we realized that if we want to go big, we have to be associated with reputable association and brands as well. Because starting small, no one's going to look at you, but if you are associate with someone is already there and established, people will start looking at you. That's what our strategy was. I think Joe can satisfy to that, and that's why he's working with the All Blacks and working all institute, because especially when you are a new tech, a new company working from Malaysia, I mean, you need to be known and to put yourself in the market. I mean, especially with the big guy, will give you some credential.
Okay. Before I move on to Sheyong, I got one more question for you, Azmir. Sorry.
Sure.
Answer honestly, what has been the role of the government, but more specifically ISN, the National Sports Institute, in bringing your product or partnering up with you in launching your product to the market? And
And what? Once again?
Increasing its success as well, if applicable.
Okay, of course. ISN is a reputable institute, and I mean, people look up to them, especially all the sport association and all the other physio center or like. So when you are associated and you got somehow an endorsement from this kind of reputable association, they give you a chance to pitch your product to other association as well. And I like, for example, why are we for a girl's example, why are they using makeup when endorsed by the celebrities? So that's what we're trying to see. So of course, as a brand, you have to have a good product as well. But with this association endorsement, you get a leapfrog to go to a greater height. So as far as with association with FAS and as well as the AISN, we get a better chance to be there and more trust from our consumer. But I mean, with the COVID right now, our business is quite affected. But nonetheless, we hope that once the COVID is settled, we'll be right back where we are projecting on our business.
Thank you, Azmir. I'd like to also point out that for everyone in this session, please don't hesitate to contact Institute Sukan Negara. You can contact them via the various teams called ISN Niaga, ISN Tech, and ISN Edu. They have an open door policy to come and listen to you, whether you're an budding athlete, whether you're a social sportsman, whether you want to start a business in sports, whether you're an academic who has an interest in the technology within sports. Please come to ISN, speak to us. We have commercialization grants, we have incubation and acceleration programs, and we look forward to engaging with everyone from the ecosystem.
Shamil, if I may add, I think to all new businesses, especially SME, if you have any great idea or any good product, I think ISN have a very open door policy, what Shamil said. You just have to approach them and present your case. That will be a beneficial for both parties. And I think, inshallah, if your product is good enough, they will open their eyes and give you the opportunity to explore of any kind of collaboration. And that's what happened for us. Thank you, ISN.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, bro. Thank you for that. Okay, now for our last but not least, our next speaker is Mr. Sheyong Tan, who's the CEO of BiiB and Neupulse Sdn. How are you, Sheyong?
Hi, Shamil. I'm good.
Hey, bro. How are you? So, tell us a bit about yourself and your organization.
Okay, sure. First of all, thanks a lot for having me today. I'm glad to meet many of you. And I think some of you is actually my first time meeting, but I hope like after the pandemic, we can have a chance to sit down for some, data rate copy, to chit chat about sports and technology. So yeah, a little bit of background about myself. I think sports have somehow shaped me in many ways. So back in like primary school, I was more towards like a track and field athlete for schools, and then venture into basketball in high school, participate in the local league and things like that. Then in the later stage of my life, I'm not that old, but so I actually started to run distance running, so like road races and marathon, which I've done more than like 13 years. More than 13 years, but still very slow. So we believe sports is a very powerful platform to connect different communities, and by focusing on connecting grassroots and communities, we can actually create a large movement among the people and promote, of course, not only just sports or how do you play, how do you excel, but also the social integration parts. especially among Malaysian, we have different people, different groups, different people from different background. So I think sports is a best tools to actually connect Rakyat Malaysia together. Of course, that is not all. We can even bridge people from Malaysia to the world and the world to Malaysia as well. So as a co-founder and CEO of BiiB, we are a sports technology company that focusing on community building. We create gamified challenges for runners and transform running into a team sports. So we launched in Malaysia back in 2017. And last year we launched in Taiwan. And early this year we actually launched in Singapore. So now we are in 3 countries. And we are also the owner of the largest running team challenge in Malaysia for 3 years in a row. So hopefully this year we can be the largest as well. We just launched it or pre-launched it last Friday. And yeah, we're seeing more participants joining in, and hopefully this year will be a great one to connect more communities in Malaysia. So I personally very interested in sports and technology. First of all, because I enjoy sports since young. And then the other part is by profession, I'm an engineer. So I actually created things, design engineer in specific. So I actually design items, design electronics. So that makes me like thinking how I can connect or, converge these 2 parts of my interest into something I like to do. And yeah, so it's somehow after so many years, I landed in my so-called sweet spots. I can enjoy sports and I can enjoy building things and creating some impact in Malaysia and even in the international levels. Yeah.
Impressive. You mentioned what I noticed most about your introduction was you mentioned that you've launched into regional markets, namely Taiwan and Singapore.
Yes.
That is super impressive. That is something that we aspire for all of the businesses within our ecosystem, to be able to move firstly to our neighboring countries. I'd also just like to share that for most of the businesses, we find synergy in our neighboring countries, especially in Indonesian markets and Singaporean markets, because of we are the same in terms of consumption structure and values. So thank you, Sheyong. Could you just share with us a bit, possibly, on the numbers of usage? Because when you speak about being one of the largest, you own the largest mass participation, or rather, is it online running group or online running activity? Could you share us a bit more detail on that?
Sure. Yeah. So we are actually the creator of these new types of running challenges. So, running is always very individualistic, regardless of all the platforms, facilities or tools or mobile apps, GPS watches, they all measure your performance as an individual thing. So what we do here is completely transform all this into a team-based kind of game. So if you imagine, we're basically creating new games for running. So instead of you become the fastest, we actually make you be part of the team. So everybody need to work together to achieve something bigger than themselves. So I think that is something we really love to do, because one people who are good, they can inspire many others to join them. I think that is something we really want to create in Malaysia, especially since we want to promote sports, we want to make Malaysia a sporting nation. Participation is a must. We need to start from the grassroots, and what we do is like what I shared just now. We create a nationwide challenges that allows all the grassroots communities to form teams and take up this national challenge in our platforms. So we can see running clubs coming from different areas in Malaysia. Not only in Klang Valley, you can see Penang, Johor, East Coast, even Sabah, Sarawak, they are joining. And some of them, not just a pure running clubs, some of them representing alumni group, some ex-school students, corporates. So we can see all sort of groups, communities joining in. And, for us, that is really, we are happy to see the result, because what? By having that, meaning to say, by having these type of challenges, all these people, they are influencing people around them to actually participate more. So I think that is something that keeps us going. We really enjoy doing that.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Before we move along, I have another question for you, Sheyong. In terms of, we are in the midst of being in a very strange time. We live in a very strange era, right? So what is the major difference in your eyes, in your perspective, between the Malaysians and the Taiwanese and the Singapore in terms of outlook, in terms of acceptance levels of both digital products as well as health and wellness products like the ones you offer?
Okay, yeah. So it's actually quite interesting to see the difference between different countries or different regions. So for example, let's take Malaysia compared to Taiwan. So Taiwan is actually a region or a place whereby we can see super high sports participations among their residents. So compared to Malaysia, I think they are nearly 90% of people actually enjoying sports. Malaysia, I think, is quite low, like lower than 20 or 10, I don't know, 20%. So of course, the perceptions is quite different. They have slightly more advanced in terms of the existing structures of sports. But Malaysia is actually very unique. If you look at Malaysia, right, we actually have world-class sporting facilities, world-class athletes and things like that. But sometimes we found that the grassroots level is not really connected to the pro sports kind of environment. But that also gives us some very interesting perspective whereby the so-called non-professional or grassroots level, they are more acceptance to new things. But if you look at like Taiwan, they will look at, this thing is not like how pro sports is doing. Then they will, they're a bit reluctant to accept. But in Malaysia, we basically more open to new ideas, and we feel that we really, I don't know, because we feel that Malaysians are very supportive in terms of accepting new ideas and try them out before they actually judge it. Yeah, bro, that's true. We do have a very accepting culture, but we also have a very, judgmental culture when things go wrong. However, there's a Malaysian way. So let's all try to embrace it and work together for this. So, okay. To reset back the room, welcome everyone. Welcome to Town Hall number 4, Libat Urus session for the National Sports Vision 2030. Today's session is we are speaking to a really fun and powerful lineup of speakers. We have Dr. Hasnun from MySTA. We have Mr. Joseph from LiLAMovetech, Raymond from Afa, Azmir from Atf Sport Taping, and we just had Sheyong speaking to us from BiiB and Neupulse. Okay, guys, before we move, let's look at the Q&A section for some questions. Okay, first question to be covered for today is from Mr. Andy Chin. So Andy, you're asking any AI, artificial intelligence tech for statistical or data applications available in Data Sukan and ISN that you can leverage for different genres of sports. Good question, Andy. National Sports Institute under the ISN Tech unit as well as Data Sukan is jointly developing a platform. We don't like to call it an application. It is a platform, it is a digital asset, and it is an application as well. It is a website altogether rolled into one called Agile Mass. So Agile Mass is a solution that aims to unify data, technological advancements, as well as the rudimentary users within the sports. So for example, what is Agile Mass? It is a ledger for data. It is neural. It is the combination of a neural network to understand what the data is saying to you, and finally for the users to be able to harness their own data and other people's data to make more meaningful participation within sports. So for example, we will basically be producing also a smartphone app which you can integrate hopefully with your running apps, your cycling apps to be able to produce a local leaderboard of usage.
And within that app as well, we will have other components, hopefully from Afa, the facilities management components for digitalization of the facilities management structures, as well as other features. So yes, Andy, I hope that answers your question. We are still developing it, but we would love feedback and also involvement from everyone in the ecosystem. Okay. So let us go back to the topics at hand. Later, we will be sharing with you guys a poll. So we hope that everyone will be able to answer the poll at your convenience. But before we do that, let's talk to Dr. Hasnun again. Doc, as we all know, sports is a globally transforming industry. Yeah? Dalam rangkuman, daripada segi perspektif COVID-19 punya pandemik ni, pasca pandemik, our industry will be poised to really garner innovation, really garner the time lost. You know, prior to the pandemic, we were about a decade back on technologies and also application of best practices dalam sport. Doc, apa komen you? How are we to, if we are to equip ourselves and to be ready, how are we to do it together probably using MySTA and ISN and also all the agencies under KBS? And finally, Doc, how do you feel in visi Sukan Negara tu kita kena rangkumkan perspektif tu? Macam mana kita nak sampaikan message tu?
Okay, thank you, Shamil. Right, from my perspective, the contribution of technology in sports is mainly to increase the performance of an athlete, to prevent injuries, and another thing is might be for fans engagement. So I'll be talking on behalf of the academics. So like I said before, the problem in academics is actually not knowing what the actual problem is, because we are not engaged with the actual athletes. So this is where the collaboration should take place to ensure that we will do research that is going to solve the problem at hand. And another thing is that when we talk about development of sports technology products, I think in any product development phase, one of the things one of the obstacle is the funding. And the funding is to do the R&D is one of the most one of the biggest contributor to the cost of product development. So I think this is where academia or universities can help the industry, because at the university we have several funding in form of grants. So university usually have internal grants. We can also apply grants from the Ministry of Higher Education. And sometimes, like Mr. Azmir told just now, we can also get grants from government institutions such as ISN. So I think academia can help the industry by performing the R&D, if not on behalf of industry, we perform the R&D together with the industry. And with the help of the grant, industry can save a little bit of money. At the university, we have a lot of equipment, such as the software for simulation. For example, we have machines to produce or to fabricate the prototype. So I think this is where academia can help. And if we are talking about bigger projects, there is also a grant called matching grant, where university contribute 50% of the funding, and industry contributes another 50%. So this is some of the things that we can work together. I would like to share my experience in sports engineering lab at the University of Padova in Italy. I got the chance to spend a week in Padova working with Professor Nicola Petrone at the University of Padova in his lab. One of the things that they do in the lab is testing products. So companies basically send their products to the lab to be tested. One of the things that I have seen was the mountaineering helmet. So the helmets were, a couple of helmets were sent to the lab to be tested for their effectiveness in protecting the head to perform climbing, mountaineering, and so on. I've also seen bicycles being tested on vibration test rig. So I think this is a very healthy relationship between industry and academia, and it is an obvious win-win situation. So by having products tested or developed in the lab, this will get more students on top of the lecturers or the researchers. Students will also get the chance to involve in the development and therefore creating manpowers towards empowering sports tech company in Malaysia in the future. So I think as a summary of what I am trying to say today is that academia can benefit sports technology industry in terms of R&D, funding. So like SME company, probably they don't have enough machines or funding. So this is where universities can help. And by having students working on the projects will create manpower who in the future will be working with sports tech company, or even better, they might establish their own companies in the future. So I think this is one of the healthy things that we can project for the next 10 years. So therefore, I would like to invite industries, academia, and also government institutions to be part of MySTA, because I think this is where we would like to be. We aspire ourselves to be the hub to connect all of these people. And I invite you to go to our website to register as part of the member at www.mysta.org.my. And we are not a profit-making association, so we only charge an annual fee of 10 ringgit per year, annual fee of 10 ringgit. And if you would like to register for a lifetime membership, there is one-time fee of 250. So that you pay 250 and that's it. Because another thing is, I would like to share also what MySTA is planning to do as for our activities. So as an association, we are planning to do annual conference. So this is where we would like to gather people from different backgrounds, like I mentioned earlier, not only focusing on the involvement of academia alone, like the conventional conference, but also the involvement of sports institutions, related industries. And in fact, we are planning our first inaugural conference, virtual conference next year around February 2022. And also, we are also planning on introducing our own journal, academic journal, but again, we would like to welcome the contributions not only from academics, but also from industries. To the best of my knowledge, we only have, there are only 2 journals dedicated to the field of sports engineering and technology in the world currently. The first one is Sports Engineering. This is owned by the International Sports Engineering Association, the one I've mentioned earlier. And the other one is Journal of Sports Engineering and Technology. This is published by the International Mechanical Engineering Association. So the contribution of papers or research work to this journal that we are going to introduce should not only come from academia, but also from sports institutions and industries. And another activities that we are planning to do is a sports technology exhibition. So you can imagine an exhibition where industries, academia come and exhibits their products, their research products, their prototypes. This is an event where we can promote technologies in sports and therefore increase participation in sports. I think technology is one of the driving factor to increase the participation in sports. Like currently we have wearable technologies, and suddenly all of a sudden people started to jot down their activities, their daily activities, how many steps they have taken in a day. So this is the impact of technology in sports as well as human lifestyle. That's my opinion. Thank you.
That's excellent. That's an excellent perspective into what MySTA does. Everyone listening, all the attendees, please take note on MySTA, but also be aware that MySTA is Similar, and also collaborating with STAL, which is STAL, Sports Technology Accelerator Lab di bawah ISN under the National Sports Institute. Basically, STAL is a link, also a link between researchers, technologies to industry and investment. STAL looks to create more companies like ATF, like LiLA. For example, Joseph, if I may use LiLA as an example, possibly the journey, or rather the cycle that you went through in terms of the years, X number of years needed to kick off LiLA as a product and a service in Malaysia and beyond, bodies like MySTA and STAL will be able to expedite the process and make it more understandable and a more pleasant experience for the business owners themselves. What do you think about that, Joseph?
Maybe. And that's not a discredit to their organization. It's just that there is a reality to how long it takes to build a company. And of course, programs designed to support startups or new companies in any way, obviously they contribute and they accelerate to some degree. But I wanted to make a comment before I said something on that, on just what Doc was talking about from the university side and the grant side and the connection with MySTA, because I do think it is an important one. And like a lot of areas of Malaysian sports economy, it's still growing, but I actually think it's quite strong here. And now we as LiLA, we are a research-backed tech company. What a lot of tech people or people that say they do tech do is they do a little bit of internal research, Doc, you know this, or they just piggyback off existing research. Like I'll look at a website and it'll say 9 out of 10 people are obese, but the company didn't do that research. They found that online. The difference with our company is we said, because I created something that no one had ever really used before and was new in the industry, we had to study it ourselves. And so right at the start, we formed a very important partnership with one of the best sports science institutes in the world, Auckland University of Technology, High Performance Sport New Zealand. And they have now been on a 5-year partnership with us. We've put in about R1 million, at least R1 million ringgit into that research program. And that goes directly to AUT. Now, what you mentioned that's really interesting is AUT gets grant money from their government. And so it's really a win-win. So every million I put in over there, their government was giving them another million. And it helps the sports economy in total. Now that whole university's got several $1 million just from one company like us because of that. Now imagine if 10 companies in Malaysia did that. And as a result, because AUT, the question would be, why didn't we start in Malaysia? One, we needed an internationally recognized high-performance institute. And I work here with Sports Council and universities. Look, I'm not saying there's anything wrong, but we had to go to a world leader. But what happened is we came back, UPSI, University of Malaya, UPM, and UITM, we've done research studies with all these institutes as a result. So we're spinning down that economic dollar into the universities, and it is helping the equation, and we're publishing research. And I joke around, no disrespect to ISN, but my company has more published research than National Sports Council in 30 years, and we've got that in 5. They're also producing athletes, right? We needed that stuff done quick, and that's why we got a very cutthroat, high-end research team to produce world-class research, and we've got over 30 published papers on our product. And the other thing about tech, and as anybody knows, even Azmir, everybody will know who's got a product. Whether you created tape or you created your own version or a new version of it, somebody turns around and asks, "Oh, can you prove it? How do I know it's better than this? Did you do the research?" Even just ankle taping, somebody will ask, "Oh, well, what's the research on your tape? Correct me if I'm wrong." And so it is really, really critical that I think MySTA, one of the key things I've heard from them today is to help incubate, grow, and create that research connection, because you're right, companies don't have the money or the manpower to pay for a research team and research equipment. And really facilitating it and understanding it. And I would suggest MySTA sit down with some of us in the community and learn a little bit more. How does research really impact that? What did you need from us? and learn a little bit more about how that works. And the other person that would be interested in this would be Sheyong, and that is population data statistics. I was on your website, and there's a ton of data that we did at ISN, and I think nobody has it. I don't, it's a bunch of projects that happened in early 2000, and I'm wondering if they built on that. And when you have difficulty even describing your own market, Malaysia is 10% or 20 or 30% participation. That information's out there, and I certainly think it's the kind of stuff the university needs to apply. And for us, without that foundation, we would not be here. Paris Saint-Germain, Steph Curry, the All Blacks, you name it. None of those guys would be talking to us if we didn't have that partnership, we didn't have that research, and we weren't science-backed. So in some cases, it's critical data for success. And like I said, I applaud MySTA's working in that direction. And I do think if you're going to grow real tech, and that means stuff that is foundational, like deep tech, whatever you want to call it, you're going to have to do the research in-house. And if Malaysia can continue to focus on that, it'll really help. Because I think there's just as good programs here, but like I said, New Zealand and other countries, it's a little more advanced right now. But I do know that the universities here are ready to do the research. They need that connector. That's just a thought, because it's one that came up, and I thought for our company, it's just so valuable, and I'm sure some of the others might have some input in that area.
Beautiful, beautiful. In terms of research and development, there is a burgeoning or rather growing sector which involves the academic sector. We have institutions like UTHM, as some of the ones that Dr. Hasnun mentioned just now, which have a very they are very influenced, or rather they are open to the use of data and research within local commercial applications. So we know how you can be connected, but what's the level of difference in terms of acceptance of what you do? Okay, so I'm specifically, Joseph, I'm asking about the level of acceptance in terms of the National Sports Council, or rather the peak performance athlete sector. Is it more that you've been, that you're a Malaysian tech, or just does tech scare the athletes and their management up to today? What would be the sentiment that you have come across? And if something is to be improved, what could you share with us how it can be improved?
Being honest, the tech doesn't scare them. They get it. Malaysia has a pretty tech-savvy group. Sports Council is a pretty smart group, and I can see the others nodding, and they know that. It's funny. I mean, you name it. Name an athlete here, and they have used our product. I guarantee it. Farhan's trying it. Not trying. She's fine-tuning her Olympic program on it right now, and her specific trainer and I just set up that program. He's doing. They know what they're doing. They had even back in the early day, back in 2000, we were really looking to bring in good tech. So I think there's a really good history at ISN to engage tech, whether it's an app for event development, whether it's something in the rehab area like Azmir is doing, whether it's something in management and sports facilities. No problem there. The problem is it's around price point. And, for me, and I think that's it, right? And again, you're at dollar parity. We're a US dollar product. Ours is a very expensive product. I can get a car made in China cheaper than I can get my own suits done, just because the materials are so expensive. And so if there's anything that scares them, it's a product that is designed for an international market, but it's selling here. But that is growing, and everybody knows KL's salaries are going up, standard of living's going up. It's a better conversation. But to answer your question, I don't see any barriers in understanding the tech. It's the same thing that we would have conversation I would have in New Zealand along with Malaysia, and that's an encouraging thing. And that's a growth indicator. I mean, when I came to Malaysia, I used to go out at 5 o'clock in the morning fishing out in Ululangat, and I would be out there by myself. Now I go out there's hundreds of people cycling and running and doing activity. And so it's really encouraging to see that market growing, and I think tech fits in there very well. It'd be interesting to hear what the others say, like with virtual runs and, like rehab. It's such a tech-driven area.
You hit the nail on the head. You touched a topic which is very close to our hearts, which is the accessibility in terms of value, in terms of the cost. to market said products and services. So this one I'd like to ask Azmir first before we move to Raymond. May, in terms of creating a better value proposition for your product, share with us a bit on what was your journey and the more important points of how, together with Institute Sukan Negara and STAL and ISN Niaga, that you managed to launch new products at locally smart prices.
Okay, I think it's all about finding the right manufacturer and sourcing. And then in terms of the cost, as we compare to other international brand at the same quality standard, they spend a lot more on branding. So I think that's the cost that, they incurred quite a lot. So how we work here is we try to minimal that cost and work with institution to push the product instead. At the end of the day, a lot of product and one advantage that we have here is we don't develop a new ready tech, which what Joe did. So he spent a lot of money on developing the technology, R&D and stuff. So what we do is we try to use whatever technology is already in the market and try to improve from there. So the cost of R&D is a bit smaller as compared to when you start from scratch. So that's one way of how we try to maximize. So as Joe has mentioned earlier, price point is very sensitive here in Malaysia because people could not appreciate quality or tech stuff is expensive, but they can still pay for iPhone 11 Pro. I don't know. I don't understand.
But they understand the tech, but whether they pay for it or not.
Understood. They understand the tech, but they don't appreciate the price. They cannot appreciate the value that they get for that price. Is a mismatch to certain extent for most people. But those people who are more acceptable or have rather luxury to pay for this kind of stuff, they can easily accept the technology at that price point. So it's very important for us, local brand especially, to produce somehow a quality product, but at a price point that is manageable and accepted in the local market. So we did a lot of research and understanding on what are the competitors and all the other brands out there selling at. So what we're trying to do is if we can beat the price, but we give the same amount of value or rather a bit lower quality. Not without compromising on the quality, but we compromise on certain stuff, but overall they will get the experience that they needed. Then it will be a good match with the price point that we want to sell. So that's how we manage overall on how to get a selling point. But to a certain extent, I agree with Joe. Malaysians are very sensitive with the price, especially because of currency exchange and that kind of thing. Yeah.
Consumer power has always been a challenge to us.
Exactly. That's how we that's one of our USP, trying to deliver a quality product, but at a price point that people can accept it and and use it without any compromise.
We commend you.
Joe.
No, I was going to say, and also goes back to the value. Now, because there's that key word there, value, right?
Yep.
Because the economy is growing in Malaysia, people are spending money. People are buying $10,000 US bicycles, 2 or 3 of them. Riding on the weekends. It's crazy. But I think one of the things also from MySTA and ISN's perspective is, I think there should be almost a very quick portal that allows local company, local tech to get a recognition under ISN or MSN quicker and faster. Because one thing that adds value is if you could put that shop. And if you're a local company, I could see the heads nodding, and I'm just thinking, because ISN and MSN, Asian countries still trust their government, right? And ISN and institutes like this carry a lot of weight.
Exactly.
And so when you have that stamp, people just say, ISN's using it. And I think it's another area MySTA can really do justice to help companies like ours, but new companies coming in, is if you're a Malaysian company and Malaysian company, not just one area of Malaysia, but a Malaysian company, you've developed here, you've done the ABC, there's almost like you can get some level of recognition from ISN and MSN because that's perceived value. And then your price point conversation becomes easier.
Different, yeah.
Yeah, and you guys, you probably agree with me, right? You know, if you're recognized, if your race series is recognized and supported by MSN and KBS, it's a very different conversation. People are willing to, you don't have to convince people as much, and they see value.
Thank you, everyone.
I would think.
Wow. Well, what a discussion we have on our plates today. It's already 4:15. How time flies. So I'd like to jump into, before we cover the polling as well as two questions from the Q&A section from Sarina as well as from Eric. I'd like to first ask Raymond, before I go to Sheyong, I ask Raymond first. Raymond, in terms of local innovation, we all know that everyone has a role to play. Okay, how has Afa and yourself and Afa, your company, prepared yourself in terms of your business cycle as well as the future business cycle that is going to be set upon you in the post-pandemic world? So how are you equipping yourself?
Well, that's a really good question. So what we have in mind is, like, I do agree that technology influences how athletes train and compete. Example, what LiLA did and also ATF do. And also it will affect how fans engage and consume content and how world-class venues are constructed. And I believe in Malaysia, we are very blessed with a very strong community of sports fans and sports enthusiasts. And when it comes to the future of sports technology and innovations that lies ahead, that we should be anticipating for, just bear in mind that eventually a lot of this, personally what I think is the sports facilities and businesses are learning to be more pandemic-proof. To make it easier for the understanding of the listeners, there are two main aspects that personally as the AFA we are exploring today. First is definitely the very least explored, which is the commercial sports hub that houses people that do sports for their leisure. And this includes like people that play sports from grassroots level to amateur. At the same time, the facility itself is going to be a place for pros to train and also to play on a regular basis, right? And second is the fan engagement technology. And the stadium tech infrastructure and fans experiences both physically and virtually, like what BiiB did is the virtual experience, the combination of the physical sports and also gamifying it into something that is can be virtually done, right? All of this we do look into, and I believe AFA is shaping ourselves to be to what I've mentioned earlier, basically to make ourselves more versatile in that sense, but at the same time trying to adapt into technology, because adaptation is basically really, really inevitable. Yeah.
Okay, that's a good answer to a good question. In terms of, okay, this question is for Sheyong. Sheyong, in terms of what lies in store for us in technology, in our consumer markets within sports, because you deal with large masses of sports enthusiasts, what do you think are the most apparent trends coming upon us in the next few years for the benefit of everyone?
Okay, wow, this is a big question. So before I answer that, I think we were talking about value. Joe did, Azmir did that as well. So end of the day, it's all about value. If let's say we can create, or even, what is coming up next is always about values that we can provide, or even other sports technology companies that can provide to the consumers. So end of the day, there is no specific big trends or things like that. So I would see sports as a combination of multiple pillars. You have different products serving different pieces of the market. So end of the day, there is no one thing that's going to capture the market. But if you can provide the value, you will get the clients. And like what you're just discussing before this, we are talking about price point, right? So Malaysia-wise, like what Joe did, people actually spend more on sports. We can see that. We can see it happening. 5-figure bike, 4-figure watches. All these are happening, and it's actually happening in a very, very large scale. Just that perhaps the sporting communities, they are like different types of people that, perhaps general public didn't really understand. Say, why do you spend 5-figure for a bike? I bought it from cycling shop, perhaps a few hundred ringgit. So that kind of thing that really differentiate people who are into the sports and people who are more like general kind of consumers. So as long as we can identify the target audience, identify their needs, the value that we require by them, perhaps anything can become big in terms of acceptance in the country.
Just to touch a bit, I'm going to ask you another question, Sheyong, which is, how are you going to adapt to this post-pandemic? Different people, the different way we are going to consume sports, and how you plan to stay ahead of the market. Okay, that's one. But also to touch on what you said just now, in terms of the global value, for example, I was shared this data very recently about the cycling industry, and from a value of, I think it has the potential to reach 69 to 70 billion US dollars in the next 4 to 5 years. That's an exponential increase of about 800% from what it was in the last decade or so. So this speaks volumes on how trends and cultures are influencing how we consume sports. That's one. But secondly, very importantly, is that we are decentralizing our view to sports, not just from a cultural context, but also the fact that we have to work from home, we have to isolate ourselves. So, what have you got to say about that? Anything probably about BiiB and what you're planning to do to be able to harness that?
Okay, I think first of all, social media plays a big role in terms of creating trends. We need people who are vocals. We need people who are willing to share what they are doing. So I think we got all these people, people trying to share more on social media, trying to be more engaged, and what they do actually matters. Like micro-influencers or even, athletes in national levels, state levels, what they do actually inspire other people to follow suit. So as long as people feel that the item is having, or the product or services is having great value to them, they'll actually follow. Just like what you say about cycling. The supply can't even meet the demand before the cycling is being banned in Malaysia due to the lockdown. So that really creates, I would say, big market shift. If you look at 10 years ago, perhaps most of the bicycle shops, they are waiting to close down. But the whole trend actually saved the market. Isn't that amazing? I mean, people actually change the whole market, how it works. So if let's say that is happening, we can actually make that happening for any other sports. As long as first, the sports need to be accessible. I mean, they can do it perhaps without facility, or if they need facility, we have more facilities for them to use it. Then, I mean, anything can actually grow into the mainstream. Yeah, that is from my point of view.
Yes, and I'd also like to add, basically in sports, and especially focusing on sports technology, it is a very gray area where we have regulation and also acceptance levels. So, for example, I've been asked to point out that there is what we call the shark skin swimsuit, which was developed together by Speedo and AIS, and also a tech company in Italy. It caused a bit of a stir during the Olympic swimming events because everyone using and adopting the technology were breaking records over and over until FINA, the association, had to ban certain elements of the technologies and change the regulation of swimsuit materials because of this. So that is one example of how the acceptance levels towards sports is, is something that is evolving. So that is something that we'd like to see a better, more positive environment in Malaysia, and we believe that everyone, Dr. Hasnun and Joseph, with all your experience within the peak performance side, not to stop pushing this envelope of new technology to increase acceptance and all of that. So if I could also share a bit, Institute Sekolah did a small study about research and development expenditure of other countries and the success, the correlative success in their sports competitions. It does conclusively show that the more you invest in R&D, the better you perform in sports. Okay, so best example would be F1. So we are aware that that's not the adage, or rather saying to hold true to for everything, but we believe with the right amount of spending, not just to spend many dollars and to throw money at the problem. But however, we understand that for all of you attendees in the room today, feel free to reach out to everyone here, and especially to the National Sports Institute and ISN Tech, for you to be able to explore together on how ISN, the government, the systems, your fellow peers and colleagues within the industry will be able to collaborate and help you to move further. Okay. I would like to address 2 more questions within the Q&A section. If everyone could look at the Q&A section. The first question, or rather the third question, I start with the later question first. From Eric Tan, athletes are not scared of technology. It's a statement, not another question. They're not scared of technology. They embrace it, especially if it helps them in improving their performance. That's very true, Eric. But also has something to do with your question. Sarina asked that our adoption rate of technology in Malaysian sports is slow compared to other countries. Why? Could it be because there's a resistance to shifting mindsets and embracing change even at the highest level of the sports ecosystem? How can we level up? Anyone care to comment on Sarina's question?
Okay, let me just answer as a part of ex-national athlete, and then Joe probably can add more as involving in a peak performance. I think we have to understand that the nature of how Malaysian government works. So we have to understand in terms of, because this is go bigger than technology adaptation and stuff like that. Essentially the fundamental is the budget that each ministry get. So when you have a certain budget, there's a certain limitation that ministry can spend on technology adaptation, and especially Malaysia being a country that we always bring technology into the country. So we have to make sure whatever money spent is can be benefited to majority of the athletes rather than on a certain individual. So that's how I think it's not about not trying to adapt, but it's certain of a limitation of probably funding that we don't have to adopt to that kind of technology. I don't know. Maybe Joe, you can perhaps if I may share. In Malaysia, I think recovery boots have been used widely in all over the world. I think 5 to 7 years now. But I mean, in ISN, for the whole institute, we only have I think 3 or 4 to cover the whole national athletes. So it's like you're using like 20-to-1 ratio kind of equipment, which is I think not suitable enough. For example, if you want to use that recovery boots for an athlete going to a certain tournament, then the other athletes that go into another tournament might have to compromise on that technology, and they might not get that benefit of recovering faster. So I think companies in Malaysia, I think that's what we are trying to do, is to bridge that gap where we can provide similar technology but at a better price point, where we can, so the institute or any association can have more of access to that technology rather than only a certain limitation. Joe, if you want to add maybe from your experience with the MSN back then?
Yeah, for sure. And I think all those things are correct. It's a complex question, but I also think one thing you said is that there's a lot of resource drain on a place like ISN. Just to Azmir's point, you're right. When you have a centralized system with limited budget and everybody's trying to vie for use of that, it gets difficult. ISN can only afford so much. And that's where the economy needs to come in, and there needs to be decentralized training, and there needs to be more partners in the community that are providing support, because you're a national athlete. Like we've now got our kit there at ISN, and we have a partnership with national programs to get discounted rate and education, etc. But only so much can get to so many people. And if you're on that Olympic profile or Asian Games profile or SEA Games profile or SUKMA, those are tiers, and you're prioritized according to that. So it's difficult in a centralized system, and I think it's decentralizing more and more now, because you have so many private gyms and places people can go to get training and education and support and rehab. 20 years ago, there was no sports physios in this country that I would send to outside of ISN. Now they're on every corner. But on a separate point, I just want to go back to the question, and that's sort of what Azmir was talking about, is that pressure on the resources of ISN. Australia learned that lesson. UK Sport, you learned that lesson. You can't rely on one national institute to provide it all. And so it really means the economy and the marketplace and culture at a whole, and partners here like Raymond or Sheyong or Azmir, all our different companies really have to be part of this solution outside of that. But we, as a commercial entity, we have to make sure that it's profitable enough to survive and be a viable company, or else that support won't be there. But the woman who asked the question, the woman who made that and by the way, I know Eric Tan very well. That's he's the most senior S&C coach there, high performance coach there at ISN. And he's the guy who said, nobody has a problem here adopting tech. I agree with him 100%. Eric and I are good friends, and we worked together for many years there. And he knows what he's talking about. But the woman who made the comment, she said, adaptation of tech in Malaysia is slow. Correct?
Yes, that's right.
Well, first off, sorry, and no disrespect to her, but you can't just make a comment without qualifying it. Where's her data on that? I mean, there's no sports system I haven't worked on in this country. There's no organization I haven't been a part of. I haven't seen that data. No, I'm not sure who she is. Now, she may or may not be right, but we just had the lead conditioning specialist at ISN say, no, there's no problem getting tech. We just had Sheyong talk about his users buying $10,000 bikes. Raymond's booking facilities for people all over the country. People are using tech here. Tech is dependent on exposure, education, and economy. If you don't get exposed to the tech, you don't know it's there. And with the internet today, everybody knows what tech's available, from the newest protein powder to the latest app to find friends for sports to the latest virtual run or whatever. The economy is affecting things because of dollar parity for sure, and then education. And Malaysia, like a lot of countries in the world, people are educated nowadays. People can have conversations about recovery boots. So I don't necessarily agree with the woman that it's slow here. Again, I don't discredit her comments on it, but I still think, and because everybody shook their heads when I said it, it's the dollar and the economy that's slow to make it mainstream across a larger population base. Higher end people are adopting tech like that. You got people in Malaysia that are buying my suits and they don't even blink. But then you have other people that want to buy it and they simply can't justify that purchase. So, we work with them. But I see those nods. If there's a reason why Malaysia is slow, I think it's more around the dollar parity, the value conversation. It's got nothing to do with knowledge, education, and exposure. I really believe, as Eric said, ISN and all these places, Malaysians are pretty savvy right now in the sports industry. They know what a Garmin and a Cinto can do. They know what an app can do. They know how to get online to find, new friends and communities in the sports community through Raymond and his team. The question is only, are they willing to pay for it?
I reckon that both of you have very valid points. You're right in terms of peak performance, but I reckon that Sarina's question was centered around the commercial side, the consumerism side, because she herself is a purveyor of very advanced tech, which deals with neural clouds and synapses. So I believe that possibly in her context is the acceptance towards really pioneering technologies, which we believe that is not, is not unique to Malaysia, but rather a problem being faced by all other pioneering technologies around the world. Sarina, we support your product. We believe that you should keep at it, and we believe that there should be an equilibrium of need versus demand in the near future, hopefully.
But and one thing on that, then that's education. I mean, I have the best coaches in the world call me up and say, hey, we saw your stuff. What is it? What is it? So that's an education question, and that's a very costly question. And everybody on this panel has gone through that, explaining what is my tech. And, if you can't afford to explain it, you can't blame the market for not understanding it. iPhone took them 7 years to reach sales numbers that were meaningful. Education. And I don't think that's necessarily just a Malaysian problem. So because the problem is this, if you say Malaysia's slow in adopting tech, then you're creating an excuse. But with what you described of her company, that tech wouldn't sell in Canada fast either. You would have to do a tremendous amount of education to bring people up on neural cloud pathways. To be honest, I don't even know what that is.
Yeah. fairly, fairly.
Like it's so. My question would be: do Malaysians, are they slow in being educated to new tech? That's a good question. Maybe the panel has a comment.
Yeah, it's not just about acceptance, but it's both ways. It's a two-way communication. I agree. And what it does, very important for today's discussion, is that we realize that there is a disconnect between pioneering technologies and how we bring it to the fore. And possibly we could further this discussion and explore on ways on how to, how to assist.
MySTA, that's his job.
That's MySTA's job. So, Sarina, please reach out to Dr. Hasnun. Dr. Hasnun, we'd love to connect you to Sarina and Teva on this. And to touch on one very important point that Joseph and Azmir brought up just now, talking about the democratization of sports, even in the business of sports. So when we understand that we need to give the power, when you spoke about ISN not being able to become the only singular organization, you are correct. You are correct. Because we want to democratize sports and also the power wielded within the jurisdiction of sports by giving power to sports entities and also subsequently to the industry itself. Because we believe that we want to shift that top-bottom approach to a more organic, ground-up approach for this plan. So we want to democratize that process of people growing within the industry, people becoming the retailers and the propagators of any products and services in sports, and also finally the consumers itself. So for the benefit of everyone, I think that this has been a really stellar session up to now. There has been excellent questions, although not so many from the audiences, but the questions have been on the dot and on point. I'd like to invite the speakers again. If you have any points or any closing remarks that you have that you'd like to share with us, starting with Dr. Hasnun, possibly we could spend the next 10 minutes wrapping up on the session and also, looking at how we can extend this discourse into more quality in the future.
Okay, I think it's just going to be a very brief one from me. So again, in Malaysia, we have about 20 public universities and a lot more, about 500 or so private universities. So I think it's the role of us, MySTA, to connect universities, research institutions with the industries. So again, I would like to welcome everybody to join our association, so that we can, if you have projects, for example, related to artificial intelligence, machine learning, for example, so we should be the one knowing who is responsible to do this. So we will connect you. It is, I think, impossible for you to find these researchers that work in whatever technology that you are going to venture into. So I think it's the role of us to connect with industries and academics. So I think that's all from me. Thank you for the opportunity. And I again welcome all of you, industries, government institutions, academics, to join MySTA. Thank you.
Thanks, Doc. Okay, before we move on, we'd like to run a poll. It's a poll focused specifically on sports technology. Please answer at your own convenience, and then you can share the answers with us. We will publish these answers on all of VSN2030's social media accounts, namely Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Clubhouse. Please feel free to follow us for all the latest updates and news on Visi Sukanegara 2030. And next, Joseph. So what do you think, bro? What would be your closing remarks on today, and what would be your hopes and aspirations? Share with us your visions to all the speakers.
My vision, that I thought it was going to last more than 2 years, and 21 years later, my vision is still Malaysia. So I just think it's encouraging. One, and I think it's going in the right direction. The other area that we didn't talk about, maybe Vision 2030 is considering this, and that is that if you talk sports culture, and that was your very first point, right? You gave 6 points at the beginning, and I think your first one was creating a sport culture. Now, I've been around in this game a long time here, probably a lot longer than the panel. I mean, most of you guys were all just young guys when I came out. And We were talking sports culture in 2000, 2001, 2, 3, back then with Hishimura. And so it is growing. But a culture starts in children. You have to remember that. That's why we teach things to children. Because by the time you're adult, you're already wired. Just ask anybody their views on, all the big ones, religion and politics and family and whatever. Your culture is in you early. And so sport culture really has to be something they're teaching in the schools and continuing to engage if you want it to come out in the economy. And I do think that was always the most critical thing that we saw is you said for every dollar you spend in technology, sports economies grow. For every dollar you spend on building a sport culture in the school system, I think you get hundreds, if not thousands back. So that's something to encourage, and I don't know where it fits in on the puzzle. But I just want to say thank you for letting me be in here and part of this. It's been great, and I just want to say to all the business leaders, Raymond, I've already connected my head of sales. He's going to reach out. We want to have a chat with you about how we can work together with you on that store. Sheyong, we've got some ideas also in the virtual run areas. Running's a big area for us, so we'll reach out with you to try and make some connection happen. And Azmir and I have already been planning to reconnect and look at maybe some bundling and things we could do together. And I think that's the value of having great people is, we know how to connect with each other. And I was looking forward to this opportunity to learn a little more what they're doing. And I think that's what we're good at. So let's stay good at that.
Thank you. Thank you, Joseph.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Before we move on to the closings for the other speakers, I'd just like to share a little bit of the findings on the poll. For question number 1, do you agree that Malaysians are open to embracing new technologies? There's an obvious question, and 97% answered yes, thankfully. So question number 2, do you use any fitness tracking apps or software? A resounding 90% answered yes. So that's really heartening to know that the age of digitalization in sports is really being embraced by everyone. Okay, and number 3, have you purchased or subscribed to any fitness tracking software in the last 6 months? And the answer is, very surprisingly, it's a 40% yes. So it shows that, subscription to the fitness tracking software is always the first step to adopting an active lifestyle where you commit to your nutrition, to your mobility, and also other aspects of your wellness. That's very good. Number 4, do you believe that new technologies are easily available and affordable in Malaysia? This is directly correlative to our discussion today. The answer is 55% yes and 45% no. So it's cut down straight down the middle, and we hope that this is an answer that can improve in the next few sessions that we have. Okay, and finally is, do you agree that Malaysia's infrastructure is capable in supporting an active and digitized sporting industry? So 13% strongly disagrees, 9% disagrees, and a combination of 66% agrees or slightly agrees. So it shows a positivity in the attitude towards Malaysia's readiness in being a sports hub in the region and beyond. Okay. So for next, we move on to Azmir. So Azmir, any closing remarks before we go on what's your hopes and aspirations and probably your takeaway points for today?
First of all, I would like to thank the VSN2030 team for having me today with all the other panels. It has been a very fruitful discussion today. I think at the end of the day, what Joe have been saying, it's not like one party. We need everyone to be on board to make sure this happen. Okay, and it has to start from the grassroots. I think once the grassroots are better understood on all this technology, exposure to sport, and there will be more acceptance to all the technology in the future. And we can see that in our kids before this. I have my own kids who are now embracing more technology because of the exposure to the mobile phone. So they are ready to accept all this new stuff compared to us. Seem like sports. So if we expose them early, then it will be easier for them. And once we got the mass market, the price issue will be solved easily. I think the issue with us today in Malaysia of the price point, because we don't have a huge market to cater for the supply. So that become making the economy a bit biased and make it costly. So once we are exposed, have better market, and then all the problem, inshallah, will be solved.
That's a brilliant point, actually. That's a brilliant point. Thank you for sharing with us, Azmir. Next, we keep asking Sheyong last, so I'm going to Raymond last this time. Sheyong, share with us a bit of your visions and aspirations and probably some observations that you'd like to share.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I think sports is something very unique. It's national, but also global. It's kind of universal because running here, the tools that you need, and running in some other areas in the world is basically quite similar, apart from the weather, apart from the environmental condition. So I think it's a collective effort from all stakeholders, not only government, of course, but also commercial and grassroots, to actually make a change together. So the sole one-sided effort will not work because it needs to be a balance between consumer, supply, and the user, and of course the catalyst of the change. So like what you just said, the price point, sometimes some product like Lila is actually, perhaps, I think Joe did the right things. If the price point is an issue, go overseas first, then come back Malaysia, next. So I think, yes, price point is always an issue for Malaysia, but end of the day, if let's say your product, because like I say, sports is something very globally connected. If your product works, it can always be somewhere else first. Of course, we like product made in Malaysia, but end of the day, it doesn't matter as long as end of the day, user can enjoy it and user can actually have a chance to use it here in Malaysia and benefit the sports in the national level. So for the last part, I would like to invite more people to start fixing the issue. So if you notice any issues in sports, in your tournament, in perhaps your daily activities, if you notice it, find ways to solve it. So we need to shift minds from a consumer mindset to a so-called creator mindset. So if we can actually make that paradigm shift, we can actually create a lot more localized solution, can actually go global. Yeah.
Right. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. Yeah, and we have our last speaker, Raymond. Bro, could you share with us what will be your vision, aspiration? If you do want to plug your company also, please go ahead. Go ahead, bro.
So first of all, hold on. First of all, thank you very much, VSN2030, for the opportunity. By the way, Joseph, looking forward to work with you. And basically, if I were to have the opportunity to speak on sports infrastructure technology behalf, I believe technology alone can only do so much, right? We need to work with collectively private sectors, the developers, technology startups, like what Sheyong said, and also the government to come together. And I'm even urging our local government to open up the community centers like the Dewan Sukan, Serbaguna, the Combat Sukan, to work together with the sports tech startup companies to move towards technology adaptation. That way, I believe it will encourage more communities to be involved in sports and occupying these spaces, basically a perfect space to house communities and to facilitate the nation's interactions and also the engagement through sports with the presence of technology. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, Raymond. So that brings us to the end of our session today. On behalf of Secretariat Visi Sukanegara 2030 National Sports Vision, on behalf of the National Sports Institute, we'd like to thank everyone for joining us today. We'd just like to recap that today was a town hall session discussing on technology and innovations in sports. Before we go, we'd like to extend our heartiest gratitude to Dr. Mohd Hasnun Arif Hassan, our President of Malaysia Sports Technology Association, Mr. Joseph Dolcetti, CEO of LiLAMovetech, Raymond Hung, CEO of Athletes for Athletes, Azmir Z, CEO of ATF Sport Taping, and Sheyong Tan, CEO of BiiB and Neupulse. Thank you so much for making the time to come and share with us. To all the attendees, please feel free to visit VSN2030.my, or you could email info@VSN2030.my to express your displeasure, distaste, or to puji and recommend a few things. So, guys, today, we'd like to thank you again. This has been a spectacular session. All the feedbacks and inputs that you have shared will be collected and collated by the Secretariat. And we would like to extend our gratitude and to invite you for all of our next engagement sessions. Please feel free to come and share your ideas, feedbacks, inputs, and aspirations. Again, on behalf of the Secretariat and the Ministry of Youth and Sports, we would like to thank everyone. Terima kasih banyak-banyak. Take care and kita jaga kita. Stay safe at home. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.